Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Lots of politics on the front pages of the newspapers, and it's the same story again and again and again. Well, there are two big stories, really. Anti-Semitism row could hit our poll hopes, Sadiq Khan. That's about the effect of the Ken Livingstone row on the London mayoral election. We'll be talking about that. And then Sunday Times, this is the Israeli ambassador, Mark Regev, who you're going to hear from shortly. Labour in denial, he says, over anti-Semitism. But there is another big story there on the other side of the Sunday Times. Somebody has been briefing, John Whittingdale probably, or his office have been briefing about what's going to happen to the BBC with the charter renewal. And there's an idea that popular programmes which are doing too well, should be pushed off prime time. There's the Sunday Telegraph splashing on that. BBC faces checks into the quality of its shows. If they're too good, off they go. That's my bias there for you. Mail on Sunday there, BBC faces charter ban on Saturday. Strictly the same story again, and lots of pictures of the Duchess of Cambridge everywhere. That's not the Duchess of Cambridge, that's Nicola Sturgeon with a cane charging through Scottish classrooms. We'll be talking about her and to her later on as well. But now to the Sunday papers, and we're going to start, I think, with Owen on the front page of the Observer I was just mentioning. Owen.
Well, this is anti-Semitism row could hit our poll hopes. Sadiq Khan is absolutely, I'm sure, furious about this because he's somebody who's got a very long track record of taking on the cancer of anti-Semitism. Ken Livingstone's self-inflicted implosion last week is one thing. He's trashing his own reputation, but at the same time, he's deeply damaging
he may be just
somebody
destroying
else.
His successor.
Absolutely, well. But this isn't just an absolutely critical point. This whole issue, because the cancer of anti-Semitism is very real, and it needs to be confronted. Now, the Labour leadership were absolutely right to suspend Ken Livingstone midway through his self-destructive tour of those studios. But what they've done now, and I think this is overdue, I think this could have been done years ago, is they've set up this inquiry headed up by Shami Chakrabarti and a leading academic on anti-Semitism. And that's going to look at the scale of anti-Semitism within Labour and wider society and issue recommendations. Now, the reason I say I wish this could have happened before is because if you look at, Naz Shah's comments, the Labour MP, that was 2014. It was, under the previous leadership. The same, of course, with many of the other examples that have come up. One member was suspended in 2014.
It goes back a long way, this.
And I'd like now this commission to be wide-ranging, to go, no holds barred look. But crucially, because last year there was 1,000 anti-Semitic incidents, only a minority of them actually led to charges. So I think the recommendations should be looking at how we take on that cancer of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party and in society as a whole.
Now, you have a huge following on Twitter and Facebook and so on, and a lot of your followers are very cross with you saying this kind of stuff, aren't they?
Well, I think most aren't. I think it's easy to get kind of, a minority. And I'd say this to those people who are kind of angry with me, if you like, on this. But they say there's this plot and you're helping...
What are they saying about you? They're saying you're a stooge.
An established... That's just my mum. No, I'm a right-wing... Yeah, sell out, all the rest of it. No, look, I think this is the point that I'd say to people. But people say, there's this big plot against Jeremy Corbyn. Of course, there are lots of people who wish to undermine Jeremy Corbyn. And what Ken Livingstone did is went on national television and radio and said, hello, everybody who opposes Jeremy Corbyn. Would you like this huge round of ammunition to use? This was his fault. Yes, opponents will always use situations like that to their own advantage, but the fault lies with Ken Livingstone. And now I'm glad Labour have this inquiry. It shows that they are taking this seriously. I'd like that to be the beginning and lay the foundations to take it far more seriously.
It has to be. You have to remind people, though, of course, Sadiq Khan, who's very embarrassing, this might damage his campaign. Of course, he was one of those MPs who recommended and nominated Jeremy Corbyn to be Labour leader. Which, of course, was a terrible mistake.
Just so we're clear on this, as someone I supported Jeremy Corbyn, Sadiq Khan definitely did not. He nominated him in order to allow a debate about the future of the party.
They put him on the ballot paper, and he's now the leader.
Now, we've had a ferociously direct attack on Ken Livingstone. We have a ferociously direct defence of Ken Livingstone by slightly from Peter Hitchens, of all people, in the Mail on Sunday.
At the Mail on Sunday, who is basically saying, he calls him Batty Ken, so it's sort of a backhanded...
Okay.
But he's saying that they wouldn't dare tackle racist Muslims. And he's saying that he was at a public meeting, actually, with Ken Livingstone before all of this blew up, and he said He challenged him about the left's feebleness in the face of Muslim Judophobia, as Peter Hitchens calls anti-Semitism. But he's sort of saying what you're saying, is that he's saying that he thinks this is being used by people to just have a go at the Labour Party in general. And well...
I wasn't saying that, so I'm saying, obviously, the issue is deeply...
You're saying that Ken Livingstone handed...
Yeah, I'm saying inevitably. I'm just responding to those who've criticised me for taking him on that.
Yeah, no, I was just supporting what you said. But, yes, he's saying that I challenge people within the Labour Party to say, you know, would you challenge and denounce Judophobia among the Palestinians that you support abroad and the British Muslims whose votes you seek here? If not, I might suspect you're just using the issue to try and win back control of the Labour Party.
Very interesting. All right, Andrew, we've got the front page of the Sunday Times was the splash from the Israeli ambassador who's going to come in.
And
shortly.
they've done a profile of Mark Regev, and this just reminds you just how insane it was of Ken Livingstone to invoke the name of Adolf Hitler in any defence at all of Zionism. And there's a photograph of Mark Regev's father. He's 8 years old in Germany. That photograph of all those school children, he's one of only 3 children who survived the Holocaust. And it puts it into brutal perspective why anti-Semitism has to be rooted out and what a terrible, terrible issue it's become.
I mean, on Sadiq Khan, I hope that the voter has enough sense to realise that these are not Sadiq Khan's views.
But this is now fuelling everything, and you've got Zac Goldsmith here writing in the Mail.
I think this article by Zac Goldsmith is just another example. I mean, his campaign is poisonous. It's a disgraceful... I mean, as your colleague, Peter Oborne, a Conservative, who's voted Conservative all his life, has said, he said this was the worst campaign, the most repulsive political campaign he said he'd seen in his life as a political reporter.
So
now,
just let's stop here, because he would say, presumably, I'm raising the legitimate concerns of voters. I'm allowed to do this?
No, what he's trying to do, the whole campaign, is to try to link Sadiq Khan as a Muslim with radical and extremist.
It's Project Fear, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And one of the people they've come up with, Suleiman Ghani, is a Conservative supporter. They're trying to link him to a Conservative supporter who David Cameron called a supporter of IS. It turned out he meant he supported an Islamic State. And the reason he supports... he's a Conservative supporter now, is because Sadiq Khan supported equal marriage. He defended civil rights for people like myself and got death threats from extremists for doing so. So I find this campaign of fear and an attempt to tap in to anti-Muslim prejudice. And you know what, I'll say this, I'm on the left and I've very passionately taken on the issue of anti-Semitism. I would like more Conservatives, like Peter Oborne, for example, to his credit, to take on this campaign of fear on the likes of Boris Johnson, who's using the Kenyan heritage of Barack Obama. These are issues which are very, very serious indeed and have no place in politics. If Zac Goldsmith wants to run a campaign about issues, you know, that's the debate we should be having, not trying to basically tap into anti-Muslim prejudice in the way he's doing it. I mean, honestly, the 7/7 bombing thing here...
Let's veer off to another very controversial figure at the moment, Mr. BHS himself, all over the Sunday Times.
Or
Andrew.
even Sir Philip, or is he for Sir for very long? Who knows? Philip Green. The Sunday Times' Oliver Shah has done an extraordinary story detailing how many months and years he's been writing about the demise of BHS and the threats from Sir Philip Green. Swear words, I'll call Rupert Murdoch, describing the getting rid of BHS as my birthday present to myself, revealing how, while BHS pension fund was imploding, that Sir Philip Green was taking delivery of his 3rd super yacht. He comes over as a really unsavoury character.
But Philip Green is going to go to the Commons, we now think, and it's all going to be thrashed out by MPs. These select committees have become very, very important kind of crucibles of public accountability.
Yes, his wife's going to pop over from Monaco, presumably not on EasyJet, presumably on the private jet, because, of course, she had the dividends paid to her in Monaco, £400 million from BHS.
So he doesn't have to pay tax in this country.
Exactly. Yeah.
Jane, I'd like to come to the other story I mentioned right at the beginning, the BBC story. This is briefing about the BBC's charter renewal, which is coming out very soon. Yeah,
it's a bit of a funny one, this. Most of the papers have got it, but front here of the Sunday Times, and this is saying that John Whittingdale, the Culture Secretary, as we know, is due to impose curbs on the corporation in the White Paper. It's basically saying that if there is a very successful BBC show in prime time and it clashes with an equally successful show on ITV prime time, then the BBC should move their show, which I find rather bizarre in what is a competitive
this show
industry.
is moving to 3 in the morning.
Where it belongs.
But it does say it won't be enforced. He can't order it, so it's almost like a guideline. So I suspect it'll just be ignored.
A lot of people watch these programmes not at that time anyway. They watch them on their computers and their iPads.
But not everybody has a recording facility. But, I mean, it can be annoying, but in a competitive industry, I don't
what's
think
it got to do with the government?
And there's a sort of parallel proposal. I think it was the Sunday Telegraph talked about it, that the BBCs should have to go back to ministers halfway through the Charter Review and see how we're doing and so forth. So there is definitely an attempt for tighter political control of some kind.
Which is deeply, deeply concerning. I mean, the BBC is one of our proudest national institutions, and it does look like the government's undermining it in terms of cutting its funding and also trying to
like
your checks in the post.
That sounds
Thank
like a
you
press
very much.
release.
Yes.
Well, I mean, you know, when it's gone, I think we'll be.
It's not going anywhere, Owen.
Now,
They're not getting rid of it.
Obviously, the other huge story of the week, we talk about Brexit every single week, but we've got another important Brexit story there, I guess, which is the aftermath, Andrew, of Obama's visit to these shores.
Yeah, we could almost hear David Cameron gurgling with pleasure as Barack Obama got stuck in and said why Britain has to leave the EU. But here's a poll in The Sun, another poll showing that actually it backfired because Brexit is now in the lead by 3 points, 46 to 43, and the majority of people asked in that poll said they didn't want to be bullied by a head of state of another country, which I think is very interesting. So it's backfired,
Jane,
and good,
do you
as
agree
a
with
supporter of Brexit.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I just think when you have an American president coming over sort of saying, I think this is what you should do with your country, when he certainly wouldn't listen to what we have views on America, I think the general public just go, who cares what you think?
Jane, the greatest giant killing story of the week, Leicester.
Well, my husband could give you a pie chart stroke PowerPoint presentation on what Leicester City have to do
I'm
to
glad
win.
we don't have him here.
Yes, me too. Why do you think I come here? But basically, if Leicester City defeat Manchester United today, and obviously it's a big if, they will become Premier League champions, which I think is the most amazing story. And as somebody said here, you know, the richer clubs have been competing for players basically from Harrods, and Leicester City have bought players that other people have fundamentally ignored, and it's teamwork, and they are the giant slayers.
I wish that was literally true. I wish there was a little department at the bottom of Harrods with lots of footballers waiting to be signed up.
But did your husband put any money on Leicester? Because I think they were 5,000 to 1 to win the championship.
Well,
so even a pound.
He's a Chelsea supporter, so he's keeping very quiet.
Talking about another great northern story of a very darker nature, the fallout from the Hillsborough verdict has, I guess, occupied the papers all week. You've got the Sunday Times there.
This is the Times here, yeah. I mean, it's incredible. 27 years these families have fought for truth and justice. It was a historic moment that after the 96 unlawful killings, which we can now say officially, they finally got truth and justice. But what a damning indictment of our country that it took 27 years. And I think there are real questions about the police, about cover-ups and the role of the media, including the Sun.
We have 27 seconds left, so very quickly, if you like, the
Kate Middleton,
yes,
love her. She's done a Vogue photo shoot, much like Princess Diana did all those years ago, and it's damned if she does, damned if she doesn't. She hasn't done a glamorous one, and she would have been accused of being like Princess Diana, so she's done a sort of a down with the cowgirl kind of look.
It's got a swanky hat, though.
And I think she looks fantastic, but certain fashion commentators have said she looks like something from the Bowden catalogue, the Bible of the middle classes.
And thus, finally, to cowgirl Rachel Johnson in the Mail on Sunday.
Who says of Her Majesty taking part in this video to promote the Invictus Games in Miami, actually, you know, Her Majesty shouldn't have done it, really. It wasn't very funny. Have you seen the video? I didn't think it was very funny either.
Never explain,
It made me giggle. It made me giggle. Thanks very much, all of you.